Meena Kandasamy is a multifaceted force in Indian literature known for her poignant poetry, compelling fiction, and fearless activism. With a keen focus on themes of caste discrimination, feminism, and social justice, Kandasamy's work resonates deeply, provoking thought and inciting change. Her literary prowess has earned her widespread acclaim, making her a formidable voice for marginalized communities in India and beyond.
So, Miss, I would like to ask you a few questions. Do you think the coming generation has the potential to bring up a community where oppression, inequality, and misogyny can become an anomaly, where the people among the community have opted their culture by backing off these common stereotypes?
I think that the younger generation holds a lot of hope because when you see things like Me Too, um, and the way it caused a kind of cleanup of the system, and you always feel like, okay, it's the younger people who did that, right? Like our parents' generation would be like condemning everything. Our generation would talk about it, but silently. So I think that you see a lot of protest movements, and you see what the young people do. They're always calling everyone out. So I do believe there's some hope, but I also think that. It should not just end with saying this person is bad, that person is bad. It should not just end with virtue signaling. I think they have to go the extra mile to cause change.
And one more question that I've been keen to ask you is that definitely standing up against these views in our conservative community comes with a ton of backlash. So, what are some of the struggle that you happen to face, and how did you overcome it?
I don't know if I overcame it, but I know that, see, the first thing they try to do to attack you for your views, like especially if your views don't align with, what the oppressors say or what the powerful people say, I think they try to discredit you. And when they start to discredit you, it's always a question of character assassination. Like if you're a woman or if you're a man, the second way to discredit you is to, you know, um, say all kinds of things. I think the second way in which they silence you is they don't platform you. They don't give you places to talk about, to talk to. So the first question is you have to ignore your critics, like when they talk bad about you or they try to ruin your image. And I think when it comes to this question of platforming, you have to try to create your own platforms, your own spaces to be heard, whether it's a blog or whether it's Twitter or whether it's Facebook. So I think this is how you, at least two of the challenges and how you deal with them.
You have to stay firm
You
in
have
what
to stay firm and you have to ignore a lot of this unnecessary criticism.
I would like to ask you, I would like to hear your takes about the point. Like, casteism is a very exclusive characteristic of our nation. This is a great nation with a great heritage and great culture. But still, even after the independence, it's been 75 years, and still the annihilation of a caste and caste discrimination is still an impossible dream for us. Your take, why we could not still achieve even the minimum level of expected equalization or the annihilation of a caste in our society?
One of the reasons is that they are trying to maintain the caste system by controlling women, and they're doing it very rigidly. Like even 2 days ago, a woman marries a Dalit man from another caste and she's burnt alive by her parents. So you see the levels of extreme misogyny in the society make sure that you cannot just change caste like that, right? Because whenever anybody steps out of the system, they are facing the most amounts of violence. And the second problem I think with caste is um, even the most like at this moment what we are witnessing in this country is high religious polarization and a kind of majoritarian Hindu identity. But even when you have this, people coming together in some broad sense as Hindus, you realize that caste operates very strongly, very, very, like nobody, people want to be Hindus in order to beat up Muslims and Christians. Nobody wants to be Hindus to be equal Hindus. So they are trying to, like, even you see this temple issue, right? All the religious heads are saying we're going to boycott it, and we're boycotting it because Modi is going to touch the idol. So you see, like, even if you're the prime minister of the country, you're not equal to a Brahmin. And I think this is the problem with caste. Like, it doesn't matter what you do, it doesn't matter how powerful you are. It doesn't matter how devoted or, whatever cause you are. But at the end of the day, where you are in the caste is what you're allowed to do. So I think you have to destroy a mindset, right? And it will not come unless this very privileged minority who are at the top of the system decide to fight it from within. So I think it involves everybody, but it also involves some people relinquishing their privilege either because of other people's struggle or because it's the right thing to do.
Ma'am, it obviously goes beyond words how grateful we are to have you here with us today.
Thank you.
And I simply have one question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Ma'am, you as an author has always emphasized the need for change, especially in your poem Aggression. So when we try to bring a change in society, we are breaking its current order. And if history has been any indication, it has shown us that bringing forth change always results in chaos and violence in a bloody manner. So how can we as a future generation control this momentum?
When I wrote that poem, I was more closer to your age than my age. I must have been 17 or 18, and now it's like 20 years ago. So I have, I'm twice the age of what I was at the time. And so I have clearly seen how these things evolve. And I believe what you say that, change leads to, in some way, violence. But I think the question we have to really ask is, what violence are we talking about? Because people always, those who want change are not violent. Often when people want change, it's the state and it's the powerful who don't want the change who are doing the violence, right? And sometimes when you try to talk to that violence or try to handle that violence, you cannot fight it in non-violent ways. So you are forced to resort to violence yourself in order to answer that violence. So I think it's a very, we cannot simply say, oh, it leads to violence, so we are going to live. Because the problem is all of this, whether it's misogyny or whether it's, the way women are treated, the way the lower castes are treated, the way the marginalized people are treated, the way queer people are treated, all of that is also violence. Maybe it's not violence that is only bloodshed. Maybe it's not violence that's like actual physical violence, but it's mental violence. It's psychological violence. It eats away. It's economic violence. So I think we kind of have to expand our view of what constitutes violence, like how are you being controlled and how are you being destroyed. And so if you look at the idea of what is destroying you, I think you get an idea of what is violence. And I think, so any kind of fight has to happen because it's a fight for survival. It's a fight for change, but also it's a fight for survival. And I don't think we should give up hope, because I think it's kind of the only thing that keeps you going forward.
When I Hit You, or A Portrait of the Writer as a Young Wife is one of your books. So how does it feel like to write about one's personal life problems and issues? We know that it may not be easy. So how does writing such books and novels affect the writer emotionally?
I think a lot of writing comes from some personal space, right? Whether it's happy writing or whether it's sad writing. So whether you're writing about love or whether you're writing about, I don't know, something that you witnessed. So I think a lot of our writing does come from these very personal spaces, but it also comes with these layers of thoughts, like what you think about it. It comes with layers of politics, how you want to approach it. And above all of this, okay, there's the personal aspect, there's the political aspect, and there's the, philosophical aspect. But I think on top of all of this is also the craft aspect, right? Like, do you write a good sentence? Is your writing emotive? Is your writing clear? Does your writing does it move somebody? So I think that when you write something so personal, you are not paying attention only to the personal experience, right? Because you're a writer, you're not the person. So you have to think, how do I approach this politically? How do I approach this philosophically? How do I approach this in terms of craft? So when you start thinking these questions, you think less about yourself. And I think you think so much more about what literature you're creating. So I think, you develop on your own some kind of distance between what is happening and what you're writing.
According to several reports and articles, you've been translating even before you started writing your own works. So how do you think that one person can translate? What are the qualities that one must have to start translating several books? And what are the challenges you face while translating these books?
I think the first issue with translating is that what do you need to be qualified as a translator? I think what you really first need is a very good understanding of both the languages. especially the target language into which you're translating, but also it helps that you know that the original language is your mother tongue, so you know what they're trying to do. The second is that I think it involves a lot of commitment and passion, because you know you can always think, oh, I want to write my own book, and you know, why should I translate somebody else's? So I think you need to be like on the second level, and you know, like, okay, be generous enough and be supportive enough and be involved in a community and say, I think these voices need to be platformed, these voices need to reach a wider audience, so I'm going to translate. So I think it's a combination of, you know, making the time, making the effort, and also making the commitment.
As I went through your poems, your works, your books, they are generally really fierce and bold. And as a person, you have witnessed different aspects in your journey, right? So can you share with us some of those experiences which has prompted you to be this fearless and courageous when it comes to writing?
You know, so sometimes they say that your enemy chooses what weapons you use. So it's not a choice you make. And sometimes I think that what made me, or what has made me like this strong, is the kind of criticism I faced, you know. So I remember being in my early 20s and having all these death threats come to me, or all these, you know, like actual, you know, like intimidation. And then you become like really fearless, because you're like, okay, this is the end point, right? The end point is that they say they'll kill you, but what after that? Like, you know, so it kind of gives you that courage. The other thing is that because if you keep quiet when they are criticizing you, they will think you have no point to make. They'll think that you're going to give up the fight, and they'll think that, oh, this is how we silence people, and it's so important not to be silenced. So I think you just keep going and you keep going. But you also, I think that's one of the things, like, you know, how they make you choose how resolute you have to be. But I think the second idea is this whole idea of, you know, support. And you just don't know how many people actually support you. Like, just because, like, people are always like, your readers support you. Like, people who may not read you but identify with your ideology support you. And you have this extensive amount of support. So even if it's like a few voices that are like, you know, screaming against you, there's for every single person, there may be 10 or 20 people who are very silent, but, you know, who support you. And I think that actually keeps you going.
And your poems like Mulligatani Dreams,
Yeah.
so they ignite the spirit of our motherland, our cultural heritage,
Yeah.
right? So how important is your cultural heritage for your poetic voice?
I really think that the fact that I'm a Tamil person, it's my mother tongue, and I grew up in a very Tamil universe, right? Like, in terms of our imagination, in terms of culture, in terms of how you react to things, how you look at things, how you emotionally absorb things. So I think it's very crucial to how I look at the world. It's very crucial to how I approach language, and it's very crucial to how I deal with English, because English is, no matter how fluent I think I am in the language, it's still a second language, right? It's not my mother tongue. So, and I navigate English because or from the Tamil that I know. And therefore, I think, you know, Tamil casts a very heavy shadow on my English, and it casts it's a very core part of my identity. And so it's very important to me. So yeah, if there was no Tamil, I don't think I would be writer in English in the same way. So yeah.
How has your identity as a Dalit feminist influenced and shaped your poetry, and how has poetry shaped your identity?
So I grew up in a house where my parents had this anti-caste, intercaste marriage, and my father came from a very nomadic tribal family. And my mother came from another background. So I think right from childhood there was this whole idea that caste has to be rejected. But also I think I was quite lucky in the sense that I had a mother who was working all the time, and she was supporting the entire family. And I also had a father who was a person who liked the arts, who was, you know, into poetry, was a Tamil scholar. So because of my parents, I was, I think, very influenced in terms of, you know, social activism, how you change things. So the idea of both working against the caste system or caste annihilation, and the idea of working for feminism came to me I naturally imbibed it from the environment I was growing up in. So, and how did that? Never thought I'd become a poet. So when I started, I wanted to be like a scientist. I mean, I did maths in school, and I really liked like maths and science in school. I really like sciences. So it was only when I finished school I was like, something in me said that, if you have to really change society, the science is great, but sometimes you have to go and, work among the people and do something with the people. So I wanted to join like a movement and work with them. So, and that's how I started my work. So that's how, but later I started writing poetry. So sorry for telling this story, but that's how I came into poetry. And how does poetry change my identity? I think it's a way of dealing with life and dealing with the world. So it lets you absorb everything and spend a lot of time thinking and deciding what to say in the most powerful manner.
So both challenges, you wrote Gypsy Goddess, and it explores the Kilvenmari massacre. So you are writing a lot about these historical events. So how do you ensure a balance between these factual accuracy and artistic expression?
So originally I started that book as a book of history, book of popular history. So I spent 6 or 7 years trying to go to the village, talk to the survivors, talk to the families, talk to people in neighboring villages, first witnesses, second-hand witnesses, and also look at all the documentation. And my whole approach was like fact, fact, fact. But then you realize that when you tell a story, people don't want to read just a history, right?
Yes.
People want to feel. People want to feel for a character. People want to say how it felt that day. They want to see it with their own eyes. They want to know. And then you realize that this is such a human tragedy, and the only way of writing about it is not only analysis, that you have to bring the emotional component into it. You have to bring the human aspect into it. And that's why I think I chose to make this into a novel. And therefore, I had to invent. There were many characters who are real life characters, but you also have to invent some characters to fill the village and to tell the story. So they may not have lived, they are not historically accurate characters, but they help you to understand and feel as if you're living in that time. So that's how I tried to balance the two.
Through your words, we've glimpsed the power of storytelling. We are reminded of the profound impact of words to connect, inspire, and evoke emotion.